We'll read the next text and the word synonyms. Tvam pahan prakriti sukma rajasattva tamo mahi tvameva purusho yaksha sarakshitra vikaravit. So you can repeat. Tvam, your lordship. Ekaha, one. Sarvabhutanam, of all living entities. Deha, of the body. Asu, of the life force. Atma, of the soul. Indriya, of the senses. Ishvaraha, the super soul, the controller. Tvam, your lordship. Eva, indeed. Kalaka, the time factor. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnu, all pervading. Abhyaha, imperishable. Ishvaraha, controller. Tvam, your lordship. Mahan, greatest. Prakatiki, the cosmic manifestation. Sukshma, subtle. Rajasattva tama mahi, consisting of three modes of nature. Passion, goodness, and ignorance. Tvameva, your lordship is indeed. Purushaha, the supreme person. Adyakshaha, the proprietor. Sarvakshetra, and all living entities. Vikaravit, knowing the restless mind. So translation, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of everything. The body, life, ego, and senses of every living entity are your own self. You are the Supreme Person Vishnu, the imperishable controller. You are the time factor, the immediate cause, and you are material nature, consisting of the three modes of passion, goodness, and ignorance. You are the original cause of this material manifestation. You are the super soul, and therefore you know everything within the core of the heart of every living being or entity. So, purport. Actually, repeat. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The controller of everything. The body, life, ego, and senses. Of every living entity. Are your own self. You are the Supreme Person Vishnu. The imperishable controller. You are the time factor. The immediate cause. And you are material nature. Consisting of the three modes, passion, goodness, and ignorance. You are the original cause of this material manifestation. You're the super soul. And therefore you know everything within the core of the heart of every living entity. So purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Madhvacharya has quoted from the Vamana Purana as follows. Rup yut fad tu jagata rupam Vishnu sakshat sukhatmakam nityapurnam samudishtam swarupam paramatmanaha. Can you give us a translation of that, Sanskrit expert?
I have to sit down and look at it.
The form, that form, to yours, Jagat, universe, form. So the universe is your form, right? But,
Universe is directly the form of Vishnu.
yeah, that's right. Directly the form of Vishnu, and it's very subtle. Sukatma Kam.
I think it's whose essence is happiness.
It's not Suksha, it's Sukha.
Whose essence is happiness. Whose Atma is Sukha.
But is that is happiness?
Sukha.
Sukha Atmakam of the self?
Yeah, it might be a type of compound called the Bhagavad.
Is eternally complete.
Mm-hmm.
Samudishtam, I don't know that word.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you go to the university? Swarup, so form, your form is Paramatma, or there's a Paramatma.
Yeah. The high self.
Yeah, I know what the Paramatma is. I mean, I don't think we need to translate that.
Yeah.
Super self. Okay. Hope you're going to do better after you graduate from Cambridge, you know. Hope, you know, pray. Okay, so much for our scholar. So there's no elaborate purport here. So we're going to go on to the next verse, which has a purport. Text 32. Agriyamanastvam agrayo vikarai prakritair gunahai ko nivharhati vigyatum praksinam guna samvritaha. O Lord, you exist before the creation. Therefore, who trapped by a body of material qualities in this material world can understand you? As it is said, purport, Atakshi Krishna namari dabavet grayam indriyai seva mukhehi jivado swayameva spurat yadaha. Krishna's name, attributes, and form are absolute truth existing before the creation. Therefore, how can those who are created, that is, those who are entrapped in bodies created of the material elements, understand Krishna perfectly? This is not possible. But Sevan Mukhehi Jivada Swayameva Spurachadaha. Krishna reveals himself to those engaged in devotional service. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter, text 15, by the Lord himself. Bhaktyam Mam Abhishanati can only be known by bhakti. Even the descriptions of Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam are sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men with a poor fund of knowledge. Therefore, the best course by which to know him is to engage oneself in pure devotional activities. The more one advances in devotional activities, the more one can understand him as he is. If from the material platform one could understand Krishna, then Krishna is everything. One can understand Krishna by seeing anything within this material world. But that is not possible. Maya tatam nidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavasata. That's from the Gita 9:4. By me in my impersonal form, I am spread everywhere. Matstani sarvabhutani. I'm matstani sarvabhutani. I am situated in everything. Nachaham teshvavasata. But I'm above this material creation. Everything is resting on Krishna. And everything is Krishna, but this is not to be realized by persons on the material platform. So, anyway, Om Gana Timaranda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshu and Minitam Yena Tasmai Shikarabe Namaha. So first I'm going to make reference to the first of the nutshell verses. Remember we were talking about the nutshell verses the other day? Which is the first of the nutshell verses?
The Gita Bhagavatam.
What? In the Bhagavatam. No, what is the number?
2933.
Wow. You get your PhD. I am proud of you. So, 2933 I'm going to read. And how many nutshell verses are there? Okay. And what is the nutshell verse we talked about the other day?
Second.
Which is? Rite Ritam.
Yeah, something about Krishna existed before creation. Everything was something.
No, the first one is Krishna existed before the creation. The second one is Rite Ritam na pratyeta chatanita vijadatmano mayam yataba sha yatatamaham. Remember that? No. That's the second of the nutshell verses. And let me find that verse here. I'll read a direct translation. O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relationship to me, has no reality. That's a very heavy state. Know it to be my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So it's the same thing as that Bengali verse, Krishna Surya Samamaya Haya Andakar. Krishna is the sun, Maya is the darkness. In other words, the absence of Krishna is illusion. If you're not Krishna conscious, there's no other state other than illusion. You could say, sometimes I ask you, are you thinking of Krishna? No, but I'm not in Maya, they say. That would be, and then what are you in? If you're not in Maya and you're not in Krishna, what are you in? Brahmajyoti? I mean, I don't know. So there's either Krishna or Maya. You got a choice. You know, you got light or darkness. Of course, you got various shades between light and darkness. It's not that when you take up Krishna consciousness, all of a sudden it's like someone turns on the bright lights. The example given by Krishna in the Gita is like when the sun comes up in the morning. Sun coming up in the morning means gradual. Just like I'm walking in the morning chanting my japa. And of course, when it's around June 23rd, which is actually the longest day of the year, around that time, then I can see everything. Or at least in the beginning of my japa, I can actually start to see shadows. And after that, things get a little clearer, black and white. And after that, I see colors. It's interesting, you know, in the dark, you can't actually see colors. You just see either black and white or just shadows. So in this material world, anyway, it's not about today's verse, but I'm just going back a little bit, 2934. In this material world, that's all we're seeing is shadows. You remember the example I gave from Plato? Actually, it's Socrates, but it's Plato who wrote it. The cave analogy? That in the cave, it's so dark, all you see is shadows. And you're thinking, this is reality. And then someone comes from the outside, and what does he say? Or someone goes to the outside and comes back, and what does he say? There's a real world there. And you say, no. Just like if you say, you know, I go to some of the workers here in the pavilion or the hall and I say, there's Krishna consciousness in the real world. It's just a religion. You know, that's what you believe in, you know, whatever, you know. I think you need a psychiatrist, you know. They probably go off and say, who's crazy? You know, so there's people who are crazy. I mean, just like, if you go to a mental institution, maybe they think we're crazy out here. Or, I hate to use this example. There's certain followers of a certain politician who may think that we're crazy. And we think that they're crazy, right? I'm not going to mention politicians' names, of course. I'm not supposed to do that. We'll lose our tax-exempt status if I do that in the class. So, anyway, so that's that verse. There's like a reflection that appears in darkness. So, all right, let's get back to text 33, which is the first of the nutshell verses. Ahamivasame Vagreinanyad Sarasatparam Paschadhamana Yaditas Yo Vishasheta Soshmiham. And that verse is, I'll read the translation. Brahma, it is I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation when there was nothing but myself. Nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. There was, of course, there was the pradhan, but the material nature wasn't manifest. It was in the unmanifest stage. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. And of course, that's from the Vedas, Narayana Paravyakta. What does that mean?
Narayana is transcendental and unmanifested.
Paravyakta. He's transcendental to this material world. Prabhupada was fond of quoting that particular verse. So, anyway, so the point is, before the creation, there was Krishna. During the creation, there's Krishna. So why don't we see Krishna? That's the point Prabhupada's making here. Well, there's a very good reason why we don't see Krishna. We don't have the right instruments to see God. Just like in any scientific pursuit, there's a necessity of having the right instruments to measure something. For example, as a common example we use, if you want to measure the temperature, you bring out a ruler. Ruler. Anyway, whatever. A yardstick, a meter stick, whatever you want to call it. So it measures inches or meters or centimeters. So what's the temperature? And you bring out a ruler. Let's say I ask Gokulenza, he's intelligent, what's the temperature? And he says, let me look in the tool chest. And here's the ruler. I said, this is foolish. You got to have the right instrument. And then he brings out a scale. Scale for measuring weight. I said, no. Sorry, not that you ever did such a thing like this. And then finally, after like 20 tries, he brings out a thermometer and tells me the temperature. So for measuring anything, there is a specific mechanism to measure that thing. Whether you're talking about temperature, or distance, or weight, or anything, there's measurements. Or voltage, just like we're worried about the electricity in the new hall. There's voltage, or amperage, or any of those things. There's a device. So right now, we have material senses. These are designated senses. Upadi, Sarva Upadi, Vidya Muktam, Tatvanakwana Nimalan, Rishikena Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakta Uchate. It's another verse that Prabhupada doesn't quote here. We have Upadi, these designations. Designations can mean certain things like labels, but they're designated. In other words, they're composed of what? Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And then also we have another type of senses, which is called the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these are the mechanisms that we're using right now. Mind, intelligence, false ego, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, Panchamahabhuta, etc. So those don't work when you're dealing with spirit. It's not that you can. An example, sometimes devotees try to use to prove the existence of the soul, as they say that the scientists have found that when someone dies, the body weighs 1/100th of a billionth of a gram. Yes. What a stupid example he is. Isn't it? I've heard devotees say that, there's this new science. No, but actually the reason they weigh less is the person just went, breathe out, and that was the weight of the air they were breathing. The soul is transcendental. So anyway, the gross body has certain senses, and the subtle body has certain senses. And those senses can only observe, measure, perceive gross and subtle matter. That's it. You're not going to be able to prove or disprove the existence of the soul. There's certain, let's say, indirect evidence, such as consciousness. Isn't it? Cogito ergo sum. I think, or I'm aware, therefore I am. But still, you can't really touch consciousness. You can see indirectly. I don't even know if you're conscious. Especially during Bhagavatam class. I don't know if Adi Purush is conscious. I can't say for sure. You know, I could be an advocate of, solipsism, where I'm the only one who's conscious. I can't say for sure you're conscious. I haven't seen your consciousness. All I see is your actions. I mean, I could go in a video game and think that these little characters on the video game. Of course, I've never played a video game other than Pac-Man. Or Mrs. Pac-Man, you know. Or Baby Pac-Man. You know, I could think that they're actually characters. You can actually, it's interesting, you can actually even relate to them in an emotional way. I mean, sometimes I relate to my computer in an emotional way, too. Yes, stupid computer! But I know the computer, you know, philosophically, I know the computer is not conscious, but I have no way of knowing that you're a conscious entity. All I'm seeing is external stuff. So, therefore, you're not conscious. No Koji-tu, no Sum. Anyway. So, of course, I do have a way, and of course that way is Shastra Chaksus. That's a descending process. I mean, just like, you know, the first thing you learn in Krishna consciousness when you read the Upanishad, for example, is that we have frailties, you know, human frailties, like imperfect senses, and we have tendency to cheat, and we're making mistakes like that. And so, and we're also in big, heavy illusion. So, anyway, so the only way we know something is because it comes from the Shastra. That is our standard of belief. Otherwise, I actually even thought like that before I joined the movement, that I was the only one conscious. That if a tree fell in the forest and I wasn't there to observe it, it really didn't happen for all intents and purposes. And then, you know, people were, somehow or other, it was just this matrix that people had arranged just for me. Not people, but material energy arranged just for me. So anyway, so the only way to understand or see Krishna, or, you know, like it says, therefore, who trapped by a body of material qualities in this material world can understand, who trapped by a body of material qualities in this material world can understand it. The only way is to utilize our spiritual senses. But the statement is, Atakshi Krishna Namadita Bhavekramindye. And then also we have Seva Mukhe Jivado, Swameva Spurachara, that you can uncover your spiritual senses by using jiva. Does anyone know what jiva is? The tongue. Seva Mukhe, if one serves with the tongue, then one can actually begin to perceive Krishna. Wow. And how do you serve with the tongue? Of course, there's eating prasadam. You've heard about that before. And on the opposite side, if you use your tongue improperly, then you have what? Vacho vegam, manas and krodha vegam, jiva vegam udrapashtave. The tongue can take you either way. It can take you either way. I mean, the tongue, of course, everybody knows, or maybe you don't know what the meaning of the Prasadam prayer is. Dharmadev Jivvaiti Bobamoy Sadurmati. That of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and uncontrollable. So the tongue is actually, getting back to this verse, Seva Mukhe Jivvado. That's why I made it Purachana. The tongue is our savior. What's that? Yeah, the tongue is our savior, and the tongue is sending us to hell. Right? Mm. Isn't it? Jiva Vegam Udara Pashta Vegam. You understand? So if you can control your tongue, I mean, controlling the tongue means more than just keeping your mouth shut. Like sometimes people try to control their eating process. They sometimes sew their mouth closed and they can just sip. Other times they staple the stomach. You heard about that before? Have you ever heard of that? It's a common operation.
Yeah, the fat.
They staple the stomach because they can't control the tongue. So we control the tongue by chanting the holy name of Krishna and eating the right quantity of prasada. Also the statement is, many stalwarts have fallen down in the name of Mahaprasada. Oh my God. What does that mean? You can also overeat Mahaprasada. So, in other words, if you can control the tongue, then Cheto Darpana Marjana, Bhava Mahadvagni Nirapanam. Then, according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you can cleanse the mirror of the heart and then you can see Krishna. Because you have spiritual senses. You have the mechanism by which to perceive God. It's part of your spiritual identity. You have spiritual eyes. Prabhupada would often sometimes talk about how this body is like a glove. You understand? No. He probably gave a very interesting example. He said, just like, anyway, I don't want to use this, all the examples, but just like, I'm paraphrasing because it involves something sannyasis should talk about. But just like if you try to enjoy romantic affairs with gloves on and, something over your lips, probably use the example of something else. But anyway, let's say people, anyway, probably use an example of some other part of the body which I'm not going to mention in class. But let's say if you try to enjoy something with gloves on, let's say touching something, holding your girlfriend's hand or something. I'm trying to think of some non-controversial example. Let's say you and your girlfriend put on gloves and you hold each other's hands.
Kitchen mittens.
Yeah, kitchen mittens is even worse. Or let's say sometimes you burn your tongue and you try to enjoy tasting. But probably use the example of gloves. When you put gloves on, you really can't feel anything. But the gloves indicate what? There's a hand underneath. What's the use of gloves? It indicates you have 5 fingers, hopefully. I mean, if you're intact. If you have 5 fingers, but let's say, using that, it's a metaphor. Metaphors are never perfect, but Prabhupada used it. But, so it indicates you have 5 fingers. And when you take off the glove, or just like Tulsi has a cast on her foot, right? And you can't really, someone says, let me massage your feet. You can't really get a foot, you can't touch the feet. But when you take off the cast, you whatever. So it indicates there's something underneath the cast, there's something underneath the glove. So this gross body is a glove, and the subtle body is a glove that's on top, so you can't taste or touch anything. And so the whole point is dissolve the subtle body. Prabhupada said, actually it says in the 3rd canto, devotional service, Lord Kapila, they said, devotional service dissolves the subtle body of the living entity. Doesn't mean you have no mind. Dissolves your mind, intelligence. No, but your real mind, you have a real mind, a real intelligence, and a real ego. And then you can see Krishna face to face. It's called Jivan Mukta. Even in this body, you can see Krishna face to face. And the gross body actually becomes transformed too. Like we say, we understand. Prabhupada, his body was spiritual. Because Prabhupada said he used a microphone in Krishna's service. It doesn't become conscious, obviously. Not that I'm using this microphone. Gee, Mike. the lotus feet of my microphone. Anyway, so, but it becomes spiritualized. It regains its original spiritual quality, Prabhupada said. Like put an iron rod in the fire, the iron rod gets hotter, hotter, hotter in fire. Like fire. So, that's the way we can see Krishna. Because Krishna is everywhere. He exists before the material creation, during the material creation, and continues to exist after the material creation. So, anyway, so I thought Shri Krishna Namadi and also Seva Mukhehi Jivado Swayameva Spudachana. We serve Krishna with the tongue, it dissolves, it gets rid of the dust in the heart, which is actually the contamination on the subtle body, contamination, and then we see Krishna. Chaitanya Marjanam, Baba Mahad Bhag, Nivarpanam, Shayakai Ravikam, Chandridam, Taranam, Vidyabhag, Chipanam, Anandam, Buddhivardam, Pratipadam, Pradamrata, Svadam, Sarvabham, Snapanam, Haram, Vijayate, Shri Krishna, Sankirtanam. So, go on Sankirtan. You understand? Go on Sankirtan. So, any questions or comments? And tomorrow we'll get to Krishna's appearance in the material world, because tomorrow is Janmashtami. And the next day is Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, commemoration. Any questions or comments? Or problems? Remember, so what are the nutshell verses? 2:9 what?
33, 34, 35,
36, okay. And what is 2:9:34?
34 is talking about basically if anything wonderful in the world and then you see it as
You say anything you see, what?
anything amazing that you see, you really see in
Well, it doesn't really say amazing, but anything.
It's basically nothing else.
And if you say anything of any value,
something about it.
it's actually not. And 2:9:35 is what? $2,935 is actually a Chitta Beta Beta Tapa. 35 is Yata Mahanti Bhuteshat Sheshvahu Pravishtani Apravishtani Tatateshu Nateshvaham. Can you translate that?
I have to look at it.
No. Please know that universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time, I'm outside of everything. That's similar to the beginning of the 9th chapter of the Gita, right? Mayatatam. Jagat. Jagat, you remember? Jagata Vyaktamurtina Matstani Sadhavadina Ham Teshvavastataha. Right? Okay, and then the last one, the last verse is actually very important too. Ekavadeva Gyasa Tatati Gyasanatmana Anvaya Vyatarai Kavyam Yatshat Sarvatra Sarvata. That a person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, most certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, both directly and indirectly. In other words, you have to be fully engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day. Yeah.
What does it mean when it says to search after?
Mike.
Searching after the absolute truth, understanding the absolute truth.
So after
It's the same thing as the Vedanta. Vedanta Sutra, Atata Brahma Jigyasa. You understand? Now is the time. You know that it's actually it expands on the Tata Brahma Jigyasa. Because the Bhagavatam is the commentary on what? Vedanta Sutras. And the Vedanta Sutras are a commentary on what? The Upanishads, he knows. So we have a scholar here. Oh, scholar, sorry. Scholar, sorry. You don't know that word, scholar.
Squirrel?
No, ask the devotees later what it means.
How you say?
There's squalor and scholar.